Good afternoon, everybody. It is just a little bit after 12 o'clock on the first Wednesday, full Wednesday of the month. So we're excited to come back with another busy webinar. This month, we're going to be talking about budgeting, the scary process that's going to help you plan appropriately for 2021. Planning for 2021 needs to start right now, and it needs to start with knowing how much you can spend and what you should spend it on. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So thanks so much for joining me. My name is Trigvi. I am the Director of Business Development here at BusyWeb, and I'm looking forward to spending a little time with you today. So if you're new to the Busy webinar, first of all, welcome. Second of all, wanted to tell you a little bit about us. We are a Platinum HubSpot agency based in Minneapolis and St. Paul. Our three primary focuses are on inbound marketing, digital marketing, and web design. In addition to that, we've been a Constant Contact All-Star for the last 9 years. And in addition to that, we're a Grow with Google high impact partner. So it's that time of year again. It's time to start thinking about how and what are we going to do for next year. But let's be honest, as we're thinking about this was a challenging year for, well, it was a challenging year for absolutely everything. And you know that sales team of yours is planning a sales goal. Do they really know what's going to happen in this climate? I don't think they do. And that makes marketing even more powerful in the lead generation game and in the revenue game. So that's why what you have to do is even more important than it has been in years past. So let's get started. Here's how I'm going to break this down today. I'm going to talk about this in 5 parts. Number 1, talking about how to goal set in general for marketing. Then I'm going to talk about setting a budget for your website, then a budget for traditional marketing, for marketing, and then for traditional marketing. And then lastly, I'm going to give you a couple of things to make sure that you don't forget. So first question is, how much really do I need to budget overall? Well, the experts say that a new company needs to budget 12 to 20% of their total revenue. So however that translates, that's the dollar figure that really needs to be put towards new customer acquisition and marketing the business. If you're an established company, the book says that you should really be spending between 6 and 12% of your revenue, but not more than that. So more than that, you're probably not having a good use of the money. Less than that, you're probably not getting as much results out of marketing as you really could. So the question is, which one is right for you? And more importantly, what are your goals anyway? So let's talk about goal setting. Let's talk about what are the marketing goals? What are the sales goals? And then what are the company goals? Wait, no. That's backwards. All right, let's try that in a different way. Let's talk about the company goals. So the ideally goals in general are SMART, and that's a fun acronym, but it breaks down very sensibly. It needs to be a specific goal. It needs to be measurable and achievable. Most importantly, it needs to be realistic. And lastly, it needs to be timely. So we're going to start with the company goals. What do we do there? Well, company goals are probably going to be revenue based. And yeah, it's at a higher level, but marketing actually does help and can influence revenue. It influences new customer leads. It influences profitability, the product mix, and even the type of client that you're going after. So when you're talking about revenue, the marketing conversation needs to absolutely be first on the list in order to achieve market growth. If you're talking about sales goals, sales is a quick 1A to the marketing conversation. You need to be setting goals for new business versus existing business, maybe even breaking that down by industry or demographic. You need to be talking about how many leads are you getting in? How many wins do you have? What are the referral numbers that you are offering? How many new clients do you get? Maybe you're measuring sales by the amount of completed jobs or projects that you have, or even considering cross-sells and upsells. You know, a lot of people forget about the fact that you have a pretty decent client base. So if you're going to be trying to market, you need to make sure that you're marketing to your existing clients as well. And finally, how many long-term contracts do you get? Those are the bread and butter of any good industry, any good company, because you're going to have the opportunity to bank on those and bank on that revenue and put that as part of your way to reduce your overhead because you've got those long-term contracts. So those are a big sales goal as well. When you're talking about specific marketing goals, you want to talk about conversion rate optimization. How many people looked at our stuff versus how many people threw up a hand, and how many leads did we get to sales as a result of that? Is our website usable? Is our product, is the way in which our footprint is out there, is that making sense? Are we getting data, and are we getting reciprocity from the people who are visiting, and are we seeing the right kind of people? Do we have a certain amount of downloads that we really want to see? Or do we measure success based on keyword rankings and getting found online? So those are just some examples of what exactly happens and how exactly you should be thinking about goals. But the next thing that you need to do is you need to compare 5 key stats to those goals that you've either set up or you should be setting up. So first of all, you need to ask yourself, how many leads are we getting right now? Is it enough? Is it too much? And is there an opportunity cost being spent when your salespeople are dealing with the wrong kind of leads? So if you consider that, if the salesperson is talking to somebody who's not a good fit and they are spending too much time on leads that aren't going anywhere, that's money and opportunity that's being lost. Second, where are users falling off of your site? Ideally, what you want from a website is you want a clear path from when somebody enters the site all the way through to actually getting, actually becoming a sales qualified lead at that point. So if that happens, cool. But if not, figure out where in that process that those people are dropping off. Next, are you getting found through online search? This is a tricky one because everybody really likes the idea of being #1 on Google, but there's a third dimension to that. Not only do you need to be found on Google, but you also need the right people finding you on Google. So it's not just that, you want to be measuring the kind of traffic that you're getting as well. Next question you want to ask is your audience engaging to the extent that you want them to? You're certainly never going to get everybody to engage with you, which is fine. And you can deal with that and you can understand that. But if your audience isn't engaging in the way that you really want them to, then it's time to put more money into change. And then finally, you have the conversions in your demographic. So when we're talking about demographic, we're not talking about male or female or socioeconomic status, although that is a big part of it. Really, are these good fit clients, and are you giving the right fit leads to sales? So I did a webinar about this last month. If you're interested in learning more, I'd encourage you to hit me up afterwards, and I'd be more than happy to talk to you about that. So one of the things we use at BusyWeb is we use a traffic and leads calculator that we got from HubSpot. So what we want to do in this, and this is something that I'd be happy to share with anybody if they're interested in it, is we want to first of all take your new monthly booked revenue that you needed, then take the percentage needed from marketing, not from sales, the percentage that marketing needs to generate, enter the average revenue per customer, and then enter the lead to customer rate. So how many times, what's your close rate basically now, and then what your goal would be. Then you enter your visitor to lead conversion rates from the website, and what you end up getting is monthly visitors needed and what your goal is. So that'll help you, and again, this is something that we'd be happy to provide to you, but this will be something that can accurately describe what do you really need out of your marketing in order to achieve a revenue goal. Now, here's the key, is that once you start getting those 5 things in place, the next thing you want to do is figure out how it measures up to your current standards. So how many, what you need to do is find the delta, which is a fancy way of saying difference. So how many leads do you need to get in order to meet the revenue goals that you're trying to make? How many visitors do you need to get to your website in order to make that happen? Are your sales team and your marketing team in alignment, or are they fighting each other? And then you ask yourself the question, how can you engage more people? Is there a way in which you could engage more people, but you haven't had the opportunity? Remember, this is about budgets, which is about planning for 2021. So if there's something that you can do that you haven't had the opportunity to do yet, now is a good time to look at it. And how can you convert more people as well? And then, as I said before, where do people fall off from the path? So that's goals on the whole. The next we want to talk about is how to budget exactly for your website. So the thing that we want you to keep in mind is if you have a new website, or if you need a new website, or if you need to tweak, it still needs to get budgeted, and it still needs to be prepped for change. So first thing you want to do is you want to strategize what exactly you want to do. So start with a strategy, even for tweaks, even for things that need to be changed, so that you can really scope a number of things. Number one is, what exactly is the goal of the website? Is it meant to validate a salesperson's initial pitch, or is it something where you are asking for a bit of information from a potential customer in order to get them to identify as a lead? Who you're targeting. One of the things, I work in business development, so one of the things that I have here all the time is people say, oh, my product serves everyone. No, it really doesn't. So if your website isn't targeted to the right group of people that are really going to be the right good fit clients for you, then you're going to get the wrong fit clients, or nothing at all. You want to focus on their buyer's journey, which I'm going to spend a little time talking about in a little bit. And you also want to examine what exactly your competition is doing. Do they have a website that is oodles and oodles ahead of yours in terms of how nice it is and the message it delivers? Well, then it's time to check it. How it's designed is also important. Is the information that you need readily accessible and able to be found easily if you want to be in contact with the company that you're looking at? And then also functionality and integrations. Ultimately, what you're trying to provide is an Amazon level experience where everything is flat and everything is easy. And you can't always find that in a one piece of software. So you need to have a lot of different pieces of software that play together. Is your content voice, is your content tone, and then the imagery all in alignment with who you want to project online and how you want to project it? And then timelines as well. If we're going to make changes to our website, if we're going to change how we're viewed online, when can we do it, and when's the best way we can not only put money towards it, but also time towards it? So let's break this down a little further. When we're talking about goals of the website, I talked about this a little, but there's a couple of different things that you really want to have with a website. Number one is you really want it to generate leads. You really want people to look at it and take an action. It's a fundamental difference between advertising and marketing, as in marketing, we can get people to do something. You might be selling a product or a service, at which point your website is critical because it's your storefront at that point. You might want to be signing up members or offering more thought leadership or information. It might just be informational. Sometimes websites like WebMD are just there for information. Might be educational. You might be trying to show thought leadership so that when your buyer is ready to purchase, they are coming to you because they've viewed you as the expert. It might be a simple directory of everybody in your office or everybody in a particular industry, or it might be a fundraising website or something you can donate. Ultimately, what websites really do is make matches between things. Makes matches between companies, peoples, and things. So to that end, the question you need to ask yourself is, does your website really make a match, or is it very hard to find a match? When we talk about who we're targeting, this is important to know your buyer's persona. And what your buyer's persona is it's a fictional representation of the best fit client for you. So you take your good fit clients and you anonymize it a little, but you fill it in with the idea of who they are, so that when you're talking to the new people, you're talking to the right kind of fit people. So things like the messaging target are important. What is the problem that they really need to solve? What is their motivation behind reaching out to try and solve a problem? How do they educate themselves in their buying processes? What factors go into those buying decisions? And what are the things that distract them from their goal? Is it internal, external? Is it a process thing? Is it something else entirely? So now that you know who you're looking at when you lay out your buyer's journey, you want to look at what they do for the 3 following stages for buying. So on the first hand, it's attract. Those are the people that don't know you exist, but have identified that there's a problem. Consideration falls into the engaged standpoint. That's really where sales comes into play. And also decision comes into that as well. And in that engaged place, you're really talking about how can you best solve their problem, and can you solve their problem in a way that they wish it to be solved right now? The answer is yes, then great. The answer is no, then it's time to relook at your marketing. Ultimately, if you can lay these things out, the delight process, because I didn't mention that, thank you for mentioning that, is the delight process is based on the idea of what happens post-sale. Almost instantly, everyone has buyer's remorse of some kind or another. So when that happens, you want to continue to show them quick wins. You want to show them ways in which you're continuing to help. You want to show them ways in which you are making their life better immediately so that their purchase in you is validated. So that's what the delight stage is. When you look at what your competition is doing, a lot of the same questions apply, but you really want to ask yourself, is their site graphically pleasing? Is it easy to navigate? Am I able to find things that I might want to find easily? And how well are they addressing the similar problem that we're trying to solve? And what are their pain points on their website? Do they have issues? And is that something that we can avoid as we're talking about budgeting for our website? So when you're thinking about your buyer's journey, which leads to how your website gets designed or redesigned, and then how your website gets redesigned or designed, you need to think about a couple of things prior to do that. Number one is what's going to be on your main navigation. What are going to be the things that are really going to be the most important thing for people to look at you in the abstract? Can you offer microsites for products or services, or one-offs or one things, or marketing campaigns? Can you show your client's experience and portfolio as a way of validating that question? I have a problem. Can you help me solve it? Yes, here are ways in which I've solved other people's problems in the past. How much does your store in an e-commerce setting have functionality in a way that is easy? One of the things that drives me nuts is if I make a buying decision on a website and then I click on the item I want to buy because I want to buy it, then it takes me to a picture of it. So that's bad, by the way. So also, how much are you utilizing new content? So things like new blogs, new news, emails. How much are you showing your company culture in a way that makes people want to feel validated that they might be buying from you, that you are good at what you do, that you can solve a myriad of problems? And then finally, is the call to action appropriate, not over aggressive, but still gets the point across? When you talk about functionality and integrations, really what you need is a couple of different things. And if you don't have this as part of your website, then that hurts your customer experience, which then hurts your budget. So to make that job easier, is if you take credit cards over the website, how easy is that to do? Do you have a member protected portal? And if so, is that easy enough to use, and does that have the right information? Are you asking for people's email, and then are you validating what they get and clearly laying out expectations when they give you their email? Do you have a CRM? So, or are you even cooler and have an ERP? If you don't know what those are, I'll be happy to tell you a little later. Do you have a learning management system? A learning management system is a way to educate people and give them certificates. So a great example of that is HubSpot has a HubSpot Academy, which is totally free, and you can take any number of dozens and dozens of marketing classes in order to learn more about marketing, and it's just offered as absolutely free. But most importantly, the accounting, I think, is the most valuable for a small business in making sure that their website's integrated in, so that the amount of data going from one place to the next gives you the opportunity to account for finance. There are some industry-specific softwares to keep in mind too. An IDX is an independent data feed that's generally for real estate agents. So if you look at a real estate agent's website, By and large, the information is flat versus any other website. That's because it's all being pulled from one specific source. If you're thinking about your content and your imagery, a couple of things to keep in mind. Your content really needs to be about them, not about you. So to that end, have you outsourced the content to somebody else, or has it been written in-house? And if so, are there appropriate idiosyncrasies of language? Are they using the right amount of keywords that are important to you? How you talk about them are important. Then keep in mind that stock images are not free. Generally speaking, if you want to use a stock image, it can be anywhere from $1 to $50 in order to use it appropriately and rights appropriately on your website. If you're going to have a video on your website, again, there's stock video that you can use, but that costs money, so you need to budget for that. If you're going to take brand new photography, that's great. You can do that, but then you also have to budget for that as well. Finally, if you need new graphics or new things created, you do have to pay a graphic designer. I would encourage you, absolutely do not use Fiverr, because that is just a recipe for getting plagiarized from somewhere else. So timelines really refer to what we're talking about today with budgeting, and that requires to make sure that you clearly enunciate what are the milestones that require payment from people and when are they. So in our case at BusyWeb, there's a couple of different things in a couple of different places. So sometimes people do it with a signed contract. Sometimes it happens with a design sign off, or if something gets implemented, maybe sometimes it's when it's launched, or sometimes we charge people monthly depending upon the service. Keep in mind that anything that you do, you always want to make sure that you have an out of scope change order fees. So anytime you agree to a cluster of work with a new prospect and before they become a client, that's a contract both for you and for them. So they know what they're getting from you, but you also know what you're agreeing to. And if it goes over than that, make sure that you enunciate that you have a clear mechanism for that. So other things to consider as you're planning your budget for 2021, if you need a domain update in 2021, that's something you're going to need to be concerned in. Any integrations or plugins you'll need to pay for. If you don't want to pay for a graphic designer and you want to do all this stuff yourself, that's great. You can absolutely do that, but then you need the software. The hosting of your website is another thing. You also want to make sure that it gets updated on a regular basis. All of these can be monthly, annual, or multi-year fees depending upon the situation, but they are something that you do need to consider. Excuse me. And also, if you get a new piece of software in another part of the business and you need it integrated with your website, that's gonna be something you need to budget for as well. Okay, so that's that's budgeting for your website. Now let's talk about how to budget for digital marketing. So back in the first part of what we talked about goals and how to set your plan for next year. And that's all fine and good, but really, what do you really need to do to move the needle? Well, and a couple of things, again, going back to the strategy, you need to really start on where you're going to focus to meet your goals. Is that going to be search engine optimization? Are you going to be putting money into pay-per-click advertising? Are you going to be putting money into content, email marketing, social media marketing, or are you going to do events-based marketing? So if we're going to talk about SEO, really the starting point there is, where do you stand today? Keep in mind that with SEO, Google changes its algorithm every 2 weeks and doesn't tell you what the change is. So if you hadn't had an SEO expert look at your website in the last 2 weeks, chances are good something needs to be fixed. There are software programs you can get that manage that will tell you what you need to fix. They're troubleshooting tools or they're keyword tools to tell you how your ranking has gone up and down, or even analytics tools that there are different versions of them that you can get for free. Competition management tools are a great tool to have as well, because if you're trying to figure out why you went up or down a ranking, you probably want to figure out who jumped over you and why. There is a talent portion to really consider, however. You really need to know, is this going to be a web developer person, or is this going to be a technical SEO person that's really going to help us jump? And if you don't know, it's probably a good time to talk to somebody. When you're considering pay-per-click advertising budget, again, you want to go back to your goals and your focus. Is it going to be lead generation or branding? And then plan your ad budget and then have software for managing. This is something that's also key when you're thinking about working with an agency like us, is you want to make sure that they offer you transparency. Sometimes agencies will roll their management fee up into your overall spend. So if you say, let's say you spend $1,000 a month, well, they might take $600 of that as a management fee. And then you only get $400 worth of advertising. We don't do that, but it's something to keep in mind as you're looking at talent management. Is that something that you need to hire out for? Is that something that you can do internally? When you're thinking about content, this is something that not a lot of people have on their radar screen, but I do think it's absolutely important these days because content touches everything. Google specifically is going for a more contextual search result now. So having as much content and relevant content is as important and more important than ever. Content does touch everything. It touches SEO, it touches pay-per-click, it touches how you're read on your website. Your email, your social media is all content focused and based. Even your videos is considered content, and the images that you present, even either stock photo or photography, it's all part of content. There are content services that you can hire out, but you want to make sure that they are in absolute lockstep with your vision and understand your goals so that it's being presented in a way that you would find helpful. Email is a great tool. There's a lot of discussion now about whether email is dead. Well, especially since a good half the country is still working from home, the answer is absolutely not. So when you're considering items for your email budget, you need to consider an email marketing program, which generally involves how many contacts do you have. So how many times are you going to send out an email in a given month? Sometimes, and this is pretty rare, email marketing programs charge you per list segmentation. That's not, if you do see that, I would either do one of two things. Number one, run away, or number two, call me and I can help you out, because I think that's a little silly. The cool thing though about having an email marketing program is that it should auto post to social media. So it's a quick way to pick up some content. And they do have some content help for emailing as well. You should consider an editorial calendar so that you are planning out what to say and when you're going to say it, and the imagery that you're going to use. How you use imagery in email is absolutely important. It needs to be smaller than print imaging, and there's a whole different kettle of fish that goes with that. Same with video as well. With social media, the things you need to consider for your budget are, do I have a social media posting program? Things that I can auto schedule. Some programs like Facebook already have that, but that's only one thing, and you might have 5 or 6 different channels. How many accounts do you need? How many seats do you need? How many posting and scheduling capabilities do you need? There's a whole myriad of stuff that goes into this. And more importantly, can you monitor things? Especially on Twitter, you always want to make sure that you're knowing exactly who is talking about you and when they're talking about you. You might also want to consider content help for social media, because ultimately, again, what we're trying to do in marketing is get people to do the thing, whatever that thing might be. So to that, we might want to have some people who are going to help create the editorial calendars, help us find imagery, maybe even shoot some videos as well. Events is something that a lot of people think might have died. Well, not necessarily. It's just moved online. So now what we need to do is, instead of budgeting for going to events, we need to budget for webinars. We need to budget for Zoom licenses. And that's the software to facilitate that. In that, we need to know how many people are going to be using it. How many people can we fit on a webinar? On our webinar platform here, we can fit 250 people. So make sure that you think about that as you're planning out your budget. Do we have enough internet bandwidth? I am recording this from my home. The Busy Web office is still open, but I'm not going in full time, so I'm doing this from home. And in order to do that, I had to up my internet bandwidth. How well does it integrate with other softwares as well? So if you can hear my voice, more than likely you got an email from this where we gave you a Zoom credential to log in. That was all done automatically. Do you need AV equipment? Maybe yes, maybe no. Sometimes it's helpful. Like right now, I am talking on a boom mic that we got in order to make my voice sound a little clearer. And you know, if you really wanted to, I could show you my pretty face, but I think the PowerPoint's a lot more exciting. So some other factors to consider as you're thinking about digital marketing. Are we releasing a new product this year? What is our sales cycle? Is it a long cycle or a short cycle? Do we want to do any promotions in 2021? What kind of events are we going to have, or are we going to go to events or trade shows? How do we manage projects? And do we need that information from the front end from sales and marketing to be passed through? And how can we ensure that that is as equitable as possible? We need to consider development of marketing pieces, and both from a time perspective and from a money perspective. Things like ebooks and downloads, those don't just create themselves. And then also graphic design, we need to make sure that we are budgeting for. And even videos, generally a rule of thumb that I've heard from a smart guy who knows video is that it's going to cost you about $1,000 a minute to shoot and edit and have good sound on a video. Now, that being said, Apple's coming out with a new iPhone next week, so those keep getting better and better. So there are ways around that. And there are ways, good arguments to be made for authenticity of homemade video. So that's digital marketing, but how do we budget for traditional marketing? Because as much as I'd like it, as somebody who's a digital marketer, not everybody just focuses exclusively on digital marketing. So there is still some traditional marketing that absolutely has to still be part of your plan. So if you're considering print materials, maybe some trade publications or some things around events or billboards are valuable to you. Those are primarily focused on the advertising function, sometimes in radio and TV. You might need to budget for print collateral, so things like product info, things like data sheets, things like books, supporting documentation, anything like that that you have to get that requires a printer to print off that you can use in your everyday processes. That is something you do need to budget for. In addition to that, maybe you're making a manual. Well, somebody's got to write the manual and then somebody's got to print the manual. And that generally falls under marketing. That's not a product expense. Events and trade shows, well, kind of think of that Simpsons episode where Homer's running after his barbecue. He's shouting, oh, it's still good, it's still good, it's still good. Events and trade shows might still happen, and they might happen, but they might be just a little different. So the industry events, conferences, channel meetings, those are still happening. They are just happening online. And so there are still ways to monetize those from an event perspective, but also from an attendee perspective. You're still going to have to pay to go to those conferences. Internal meetings, is that something that we need to plan ahead for? And then supplies, making sure that if you're sending somebody to an actual conference or an actual out-of-town meeting, well, you got to budget for the plane ticket, you got to budget for the hotel, probably have to budget a per diem for food as well. You have to ship your stuff, your transports, business cards, folders, all of falling into that going to a trade show. And you always have to never forget the trinkets. Half the people who are going to be there are just really wanting new pens, so you always got to make sure you got really cool new pens. A couple other items to consider when you're talking about traditional marketing budgeting. What is going to be the cost of the promotion? So if you're giving something away for 50%, you make 50% margin on it, well, then you're probably going to be fine. But if you're dipping into your margin, you want to make sure that you budget for that. So in your promotional prices. Client gifts are another thing that you absolutely have to consider that will get pushed back onto marketing. So make sure you budget some money for that. Also loyalty programs, the materials for loyalty programs, the communications, all of that should be considered a separate campaign, and make sure that you're rolling up into your budget as well. If you have channel communications, if you're selling through channels, that's another thing that you need to do, is empower your channel sellers to give them everything they need in order to make money for you. So things like MBF, you absolutely need to plan for, and making sure that you're updating them on new and exciting product updates. So there are always things that you forget. There's always things where you go, oh man, that really would have been a great idea. I really should have done that. There's always things that we forget, but here's the checklist here at BusyWeb that we keep. So number one, outsourcing costs. So as we're looking at outsourcing costs, we're asking ourselves every single time, what's our team's capacity based on existing work and based on what we project for new work? What are our team's strengths? And is there an opportunity cost of not outsourcing? If you can put a dollar figure on that, more is the better. And make sure that if you are working in partnership, they agree with your strategy for outsourcing. Ideally, you don't want to work with a lot of different companies. You only really want to work for one outside company. And you want to make sure that you ask about any price increases or existing retainer work that you can get into in order to keep your budget down for 2021. When you think about software, are you going to upgrade your current software into more functionality or even more users? Or are you going to buy new software in order to make your life easier? Sometimes software programs have mid-year price increases. Well, if you've had those the last 3 years in a row, maybe it's time to turn around and check and see if you're going to have it the fourth. And make sure you understand how the price is displayed. Really what you want to ask for is, what's my out-the-door cost? So you really know that all the things that you need, what's it really going to cost, so you don't, you're not confused on that. Sometimes you have to pay a little more for monthly pricing or less for annual pricing, and what are the billing cycles and when does it hit? Other items to keep in mind: conferences, continuing education, virtual trade shows, any AV equipment. And then finally, just thinking through your tactics. What really are you going to need to accomplish in this virtual world, and how are you going to do it? Now is the time to ask for it. Now is the time to plan for it. Now is the time to get the money for it, so when you need it, it's there. So today we talked about budgets. This is continuing our movie theme. This was a Blazing Saddles movie spoof, which we'll be honest, we had a little trouble finding appropriate Blazing Saddles references to fit this. But we had good intentions, and we tried real hard. So we talked about goal setting. We talked about how to budget for a website, and how that relates into everything else that goes into a business, how to budget for marketing and traditional marketing, and then some things that you probably shouldn't forget. So now go do that voodoo that you do so well. Oh, I miss Harvey Korman. As a thank you for joining us today, we are going to send you our beginner's guide to digital marketing. We encourage you to take a look at that. And if you have questions, I'd love to talk to you about it later. That'll be sent to you later today. Also, if you'd like a copy of the recording of this to share with somebody else, I'd be more than happy to do that. Just reach out to me afterwards. Next month's webinar, it's not in the burn book, Influencer Marketing for B2B. So if you're not a big Mean Girls fan, I had to be told that this was a reference to Mean Girls, and that the Mean Girls on Wednesdays wear pink. So that's going to be on Wednesday the 4th. You'll have me again, and so I'm looking forward to that. And you can find out more information about that at busyweb.com/events. Finally, here's me. Here's my phone number. Here's my email address. Please contact me if you have any questions, need any help. We like to be helpers here at BusyWeb. We like to make sure that we are offering as much service as we can in order to make your life better. So if you need anything as it relates to this webinar or anything else, really, let me know, and I'd be more than happy to do anything I can to help you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for being part of the BusyWeb universe. Any questions, let me know, but we'll look forward to seeing you next month at our next Busy webinar.